So now to the new questions being raised about the Trump administration's policies after a week of shifts from the president on Russia, China, and NATO and other areas. So here's how the White House press secretary Sean Spicer explained it in his press briefing on Thursday.
That what you're referring to as a shift in a lot of ways, and if you look at what's happened, it's those entities or individuals in some cases or issues evolving towards the president's position.
So joining me now, MSNBC political analyst Jonathan Alter, a columnist for the Daily Beast, and Jillian Milcher. I don't know why they put that little thing in there in the prompter. Senior fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, and Jillian, so let's start with you. Your reaction to Spicer's reaction to the shifts, the explanation.
Well, I think this was totally predictable if you looked at candidate Trump. He gave you whiplash throughout the entire trail. Even as just his shift on health care alone has been pretty profound. But I think what we're seeing here is that he's going into it with the perspective of a businessman, which is what people liked about him throughout the election. He's not an ideological guy, and I think that's why it really matters who's advising him. It'll be interesting to see whether his constituency sticks with him. We saw some frustration, certainly over Syria. I expect to see it over China trade, over Export-Import Bank. But I think that's the political dynamic right now, that he's going into office as a businessman trying to figure out what works. And he's not coming into it with the background and the ideology of a political scientist.
Well, what Donald Trump would be perceived as is pragmatic to his own success, and then embellishing that success to success breeds success. So what do you make of Spicer saying people are evolving to the president's position? Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't. And Donald Trump is not a political scientist, to put it mildly. But I think this is a welcome development, Thomas, because he's recognizing the realities of governing. And they are more complicated than the campaign. In the campaign, you can throw out the red meat. In government, you have to deal with mystery meat. Subtleties, complexities, reality. And reality is a stubborn thing, and he's starting to be confronted with it, the idea that things are not nearly as simple as he thought they were. He said, "I alone can change it," in his convention speech. That was preposterous, and he's now learned that. And he's learned that just reacting viscerally to issues from your gut doesn't really work when you're in government.
Well, yeah, this is chess, not checkers. Paul Ryan even said, you know, we got a lot of learning to do because we were the party of no, and this was after health care. We've been the party of no for so long that we don't have the mindset around getting these ideas done, getting these ideas through. So, Jillian, an article in Politico looked at some of the policy shifts. Donald Trump's true believers are losing the faith. Heidi Prisbilla and Josh Barrow just on saying, no, not really. Some people might be doing a double take at other things, but not really sitting at home around the kitchen table saying, is China really a currency manipulator?
Well, I think we're gearing up for a very interesting midterm election. Not to go too far out, but I mean, if you go to Red Meat America, if you go to the heartland, I think conservatives are very frustrated with where government's been. There's a lot of palpable anger and frustration. You saw the divide within the party with the health law, and I think he's playing with fire on both sides, changing positions. On one hand, it is welcome to see the realities of office changing his mind on some things. On the other side, we have that Red Meat Tea Party activist, I guess, branch of the party that took him at his word on many of the things that he said during the campaign. And I think they will not hesitate to be angry at him if he goes back on his promises.
Do you think that's a problem, though, with the America First stuff and the fact that now the Trump administration, you know, they hate certain headlines. A lot of the response to bomb dropping or saber rattling has been good, but that takes us away from their America First mission on the campaign and puts us in the foreign policy sphere that the Steve Bannon wing wanted to avoid.
You know, this is a fascinating time for the GOP because I think we almost have two parties going on right now. Trump was able to expand it, bring in constituents from particularly the blue-collar labor left. But I think that there are significant ideological rifts within the party right now. It's being reckoned through Trump as this kind of unlikely embodiment of figuring out how that works in governance. But yeah, I think the establishment to the Tea Party rift is what it's going to play out on. And it's very divisive. I think there's a lot of anger between those two sides and whether they can collaborate. We'll see. There may be midterm consequences.
And do you think that is going to be the case? I mean, and there are lots of folks that might not have completely become a Republican. They took a chance on Donald Trump that he was just part of the surprise party because he's not really a Democrat, not really a Republican. It's going to be a surprise.
Right, well, first of all, he's way down in the polls. He's 20 points lower than other presidents at this time in their presidency. He has time to come back and recover. All presidents do. The problem is he's promised so many unrealistic things that his chances of actually bringing all those jobs back to those areas that he carried are very slim, and he's risking people thinking that he's stabbing them in the back, that basically he promised all of these things. He promised to drain the swamp, and then what does he do? He goes and he acts like an insider on steroids, not letting anybody see the White House logs, stocking his government with people from Goldman Sachs, and so I think he's really at risk, at real peril with broad swaths of the Republican Party. Meanwhile, the Democrats are the ones who are energized, and you're going to see that today with some of the tax demonstrations.
And that is a big deal to shift away from the transparency of White House logs. Although Obama did it, there were still FOIA requests that journalists had to go after to get items about who came through the doors there. But this makes it a whole different level, and especially at Mar-a-Lago as well, where the president is spending almost all of his free time, if not at that Trump property, at another Trump property. Do you see the big conflict there and that this is a problem for them?
Extraordinarily frustrating. As a conservative, the Obama administration kept saying it was the most transparent in history. Well, I have public records requests that I personally filed that took 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. I have ones that I still haven't heard back on. The visitors' logs were one thing that were fairly transparent, and to see the Trump administration be less transparent in this respect than the Obama administration, that should be bipartisanly disturbing. We want transparency in government. It's a bipartisan issue, and this is going to make it so much more difficult to hold government accountable, which is what conservatives are really about.
Yeah, well, it's the people's house. We should know who's coming in and out of the people's house. Jillian Melcher, great to see you. Jonathan Alter, great to see you. Thank you very much.